guys, welcome back to Predatory Exotics. Today we're going to be talking about how to keep your reptiles nice and cool during the warmer months of the year. So if you are keeping a more delicate species that is less tolerable to the warmer months, if you've got something like a crested gecko like you've got behind us, or if you've got poison dart frog, something like that, that can't take sort of above 80 degrees, we're going to teach you how to keep your reptile room cool, or each individual tank cool.
So starting off with how to keep your actual reptile room cool, the number one, by far best way in this list is of course AC. Air conditioning available around the world, sadly not in the UK, we don't actually have that. But there is some other options that you can do on Amazon. For like a couple £100 you can buy a box unit that attaches up to your window, so you just keep one specific room cool. But if you have the option of the whole house, that's probably the best way for you.
So if you do have a reptile room, you've got to think about how you're going to lay out all your reptiles. Heat actually rises in the room, so the top part of the room is going to be a lot hotter than down on ground level. So if you have stuff like crested geckos, poison dart frogs, keep them on your lower shelving, and then as you move up the walls, put your desert species up the top. This means if you put a desert species on the bottom, the hot is going to rise up to your cooler species, and they're going to be a lot hotter than you might wish. So if you keep your reptiles in your room and it's near a window, make sure that isn't in direct sunlight. This can increase the tank temperature, which could raise it to potentially lethal levels, and we don't want that for our reptiles. So if you keep it, put it in a shaded area, and this is going to keep it a lot cooler than it would be by the window.
Moving on to a more cost-effective and viable option for you is, of course, fans. Now, as you can see here, this is the kind of fan we use in our current reptile room. It's just a standing floor fan, but produces a lot of cool air. Now, of course, fans don't actually cool the air down in the room. It's more kind of moving the air, causing it to be cooler. This, of course, can dry out your tanks quite a bit, so you've got to make sure you keep an eye on your humidity. Also, an option is an actual in-tank fan. We don't actually personally have any experience with in-tank fans, but we have seen a few online. But of course, like we said, this can dry out the tank quite a bit, so you're going to want to make sure you're doing more spray downs than you would normally.
And as Ollie just mentioned about spray downs, you are going to want to increase the amount you are spraying your tank. If you maybe do it in the morning and the evening, you might have to do one at lunchtime as well. This is going to make sure that increased humidity in the tank is going to stay throughout the day, as it would usually dry out during the hotter temperatures of your summer months. But be careful not to spray it down too much, because if the soil and the substrate stays soggy all the time, this can mean mold can develop in the soil and in your tank. This is a whole another issue, because it can increase the chance of respiratory infections in your reptiles, and this can kill them off very quickly, so you don't want that inside your tank.
Now, a way that you can actually lower your temperature, not by a drastic amount, but by quite a bit, is actually purchasing some kind of fog machine. Now, we actually have one hooked up behind us. As you can see, we have the Swell Reptile Reptifogger just behind us. Now, this, of course, pumps cool air, especially if you put cold water inside it, into the actual tank itself, and cools the actual tank inside. Now, of course, this not being actual like pushed air from a fan won't drop the humidity, it will actually raise your humidity. So we think it's a good purchase to have, especially during the hotter months, but it won't be a drastic change in temperature, a couple degrees at most.
So as we know, there's a few different types of tanks you can buy. Obviously there's the wood tanks, there's the glass tanks, and there's the PVC tanks. Wood tanks are actually going to hold in the heat a lot more. They're designed for more desert species. A glass tank like this isn't as efficient as keeping the heat in, so it means that if you want to cool down your temperature of your tank, this is going to release heat outwards, and it's not going to be as temperature efficient. But that's okay if you have a species that's going to be more sensitive to the heat. You don't want it to be stuffy and increase the heat in there too much. This is going to be a lot safer for your reptile. You can always heat it up more if needed, but it's harder to cool it down, as we found out during this video.
Now, one of the cheapest ways of actually cooling down your tank and increasing the humidity is get just an ice bottle, put it in the freezer, and then when you need it, place it simply on top of the mesh. Basically, the cool air will drop into the tank, and it will also drip any condensation, cold condensation, into the tank. Now, there's a few downsides about this. Of course, it can cause your tank to be too wet, like we said before, and increase risk of mold. But another issue is that it can rust the top of your mesh, so you're going to want to keep an eye on it. Make sure you're not leaving too much water on top and leaving it overnight, because of course this will cause it to actually rust. Now, we do not recommend ever putting actual ice inside of the tank, because if they come in direct contact with them, it can be quite dangerous. So yeah, if you just put it on top of the mesh, it will be a nice, easy, cheap way of cooling down your tank.
So as a last resort, you can turn off the lighting in your tank. If you have an LED, that won't produce any heat, so you can leave that on. But if you have a UVB bulb, like we do have here, this produces a small amount of heat and is going to increase your temperature in your tank very slightly. So obviously be careful if you have a reptile that needs its UVB a lot more than something like a crested gecko, which doesn't necessarily need the UVB. So maybe the light off for a few days during the hottest parts of the year won't affect it too much. But this is a good way if you have a low level UVB species, just turn off the light and it should decrease that temperature just a little bit more, especially with the other combined stuff you can do. Should keep your reptile nice and healthy.
So we hope you guys have enjoyed our tips on how to keep your reptiles cool during the hotter months of the year. If we've maybe missed something or you've got some tips, don't forget to leave them down below and let us know.
So if you did enjoy this video, don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe to this YouTube channel. We are also on TikTok and Instagram for more updates on all of our reptiles and all of our reptile journey. We hope you grabbed some useful tips from this video.
And we will see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.